Okay, so last night I did a race on Zwift and it was the 4th round of the W2RL Racing League. I want to talk to you very briefly about what I learned when I did it, what the decisive moment I feel in the race was, in fact there was two in my opinion, and how it kind of relates to the title of this video, which is kind of, I didn't really know what to call it, like how to create breakaways on Zwift, like how to bridge to a breakaway, how to bridge to, like I didn't know what to call it. So take what you want from this, but it's interesting nonetheless, and I thought that's why I delve into it. So first off, we had the really hard KOM on that Yorkshire circuit, which always splits the group up. Now, I gotta be honest, I didn't have a warm-up prior to this, apart from a ride outside earlier in the day. So I was going into this race like kind of like fresh. Now, you all know the first climb on this circuit is a long drag, so it kind of gives you time to ride yourself into it. However, being that the laps are so short, and in this instance I think we did like a 17-minute lap, was it? Something like crazy like that. Technically I only had about 10 minutes of like riding in my legs before we hit that first KOM. When we hit that first KOM, I was in a fairly good spot, but I was caught up in this like kind of washing machine effect, which I'll keep kind of bouncing back and forth between real life racing and Zwift racing, because there are things that really do you know, happen in real racing that do happen on Zwift. And this is what happened here in this instance, where I was kind of caught up in this washing machine effect that I couldn't really get on the gas to move up and move through the group. And because of that, when it all strung out over the top, I was caught out in a bad position. Taking in that first lap, I was on the second group in the road. That's not the gruppetto. The gruppetto's like, you know, the last group on the road, like the laughing bus. Everybody's in the gruppetto. Everyone's just trying to get round. Everyone's done their job and they're in it. I was actually in a second group. I was there with Paul Hamlet, my teammate, and I was also there with Q. Now, we were in a pretty sizable group, but knowing with the race radio like how close the front group still was to us, like there were only, I don't know, what was it, like 17, 18 seconds at one point, the gap. Now, coming through the finish line doing that first lap, I already was kind of, you saw it on the live stream, I was already kind of like getting in my head that I wouldn't, like, that I was pretty annoyed at the fact that I couldn't get over the climb the first time round, the KOM, with the front group. And I've got a screenshot here of actually that climb. And it turned out to be my fastest ever ascent of that KOM. We did a 1:56 for the official kind of Strava segment. The following lap was only like 3 seconds slower, but my previous best to that point was 2 minutes flat. So 4 seconds quicker at that KOM. Considering everything else happening, like my form, my fitness, everything, I still went up there and got dropped, but I was 4 seconds quicker than my best ever. And I know we were in a group and everything else, but just that is something to take away from this race already. Now, that's one match burnt, okay? Now, Yorkshire is a pile of matches, right? You just like, you take your matchbox, you go like that with a match, you throw it away. You get another one, you throw it away. And you're just going through your matches. Obviously, the fitter you are, the bigger your matchbox, but then also, you know, when the race is going, you're not actually burning through those matches because you've got such a capacity to ride when everyone else is burning matches and you're still there just kind of still holding on to your single match. So because of my fitness at the minute, I am going through matches. Now, I went through a match there, obviously, on the KOM. It goes without saying, everybody did. But coming through the start-finish banner, after that first lap, I made a decision that I could either stay in the group I'm in and, knowing what my sprint is like, kind of get a mediocre position in that group. Knowing that I had teammates in that group, but I only had one teammate up the road, being Matt, I could gamble on the really long drag out of the start finish area and try and get across to Matt in that front group. Knowing that they would now be recovering and waiting for the next KOM, there's a potential for them to be going not so slow, but slow enough that you could bridge a gap. Now, obviously the gap was 17 seconds. It's a fairly big gap. But you've just got to commit to it. You know, this comes back to like how the breakaways work in Zwift. Don't get me wrong, like there has to be things that go in your favour. You obviously have to be strong enough to do it in the first place. But that doesn't mean if you're in the D category or the C category, it doesn't matter what category you're in, you know, you have to be strong enough to make the move in the first place. But the biggest thing is you gotta have some luck, but you gotta have the timing right, and you've also got to be fully committed at it. Just like you would be in a real world race where, you know, you're gonna say, look guys, we're gonna attack at this crosswind, there's gonna be no mercy, we're going for it, and we'll just see what happens the other side. And it's in those situations where, you know, you have got to put it all on the line, because it's a situation where, you know, I've got nothing to lose, because I would still find myself in that group that I was already in if I didn't get across to the front group before the top of the long drag. I would just come back to that group. Yes, I would have burned a match, but in theory, you know, we're all kind of roughly the same ability in that group. So I've got nothing to lose by bridging across to that front group. I'm putting myself in a position where the next time we hit the KOM, which will be the final time, I then have a chance of redemption. I have a chance to get over it in the front group. Now we'll come to that in a second, but my whole lap time, so my first lap was like almost identical. I think it was like a 17-minute, 25-second lap. But the second lap was quicker, 17:18, and that's the fastest lap I've ever done on that course by a fair margin. Like 17:33 is my third best time, which was my best time up until last night. But I burnt another match by trying to get across, and sometimes you have to risk burning a match to save other things, because the group I was in ended up finishing almost a minute down, when at the point when I left them, we were only 17 seconds behind that front group. So by committing to get across, I not only got across, but knowing how, you know, easy they were taking it in that front group because there's such a big bunch and they're all waiting for that one effort up the KOM. By getting there, it's actually easier. Paul, you did a really good ride when we were doing the race in France the other day, France on Zwift obviously, and we'd got over the first KOM, which was like a 5-minute effort. Paul found himself in the second group. That was actually like a 17-second gap, but it was a flat road. Okay, bearing in mind this was on a climb, but he was on a flat road, and I dropped back a little bit. He came across the gap, and he managed to close that gap on the flat, which is probably harder than on a climb on Zwift. But that was a match, and that was a risk he took. But by getting across to the front group, he realised that actually it was easier in the front group because, well, it nearly always is in Zwift. You find yourself in the front group, and when you do find yourself in the front group, it's almost always on average, easier. But when they go hard, it's really, really flipping hard. So that's the difference. So anyway, I just wanted to chat about it because it was on my mind a lot when I was doing the recap after the race, and I was thinking I need to make it sound a bit clearer, and I need to make it into its own explanation, because these things don't happen very often, and when they do, it's interesting to pull it apart and to see what happens. And eventually we got to the KOM, and I got over it in the front group, so I obviously needed that lap and a half to warm up, and then we got to the finish, and I managed to have a decent result. You know, Matt came third, but for me, that was probably the best result I've ever had on a course like that, which is kind of interesting.